Planning a trip to Portugal? Whether you're exploring Lisbon, surfing in Ediceto, or road tripping through the Alentejo, staying connected is essential. I use Airalo every time I travel, even on some surfboat trips, adventures to the Maldives. So when we connected to collaborate, I was really genuinely happy. Airalo's eSIMs give you instant data the moment you land in a foreign country. No queues, no physical SIM cards, just seamless, reliable coverage. Travel smarter, stay connected, download Airalo before your next adventure. Follow this link in the show notes to get connected today. This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. I would like to welcome this morning Bruna Ramalho Galamba. Bruna, she's works in the intersection of archaeology, digital technology, and science communication. It's fascinating. I'm really into archaeology, and if you notice around Portugal, there's plenty of historic buildings, and hopefully today we're going to be speaking specifically about the Fortaleza de Santa Catarina, de Ribamar, and some other places wherever we lead to in this podcast. Bruna, a really, really warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everyone listening, and good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be here and talking about archaeology and science communication, which is a passion that I have always had. Archaeology, not science communication, but I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean it's a fascinating subject, and you know it's I'm really passionate about watching YouTube, and I find a bunch of stuff on Portugal and archaeology and anthropology, and it's a really cool medium, and I'm really happy to see that you are making a lot of headway in that. You've built a profile that combines archaeology and science communication. So what motivated you to bridge these two fields, and where do you see the biggest gaps today in how archaeology is communicated to the public?
So I have always wanted to be an archaeologist. I am 29 years old currently, but when I was 4 or 5, I watched a movie. I know the name in Portuguese, but I don't know the name in English. But it's Doraemon and the Mayan Empire.
Okay.
But I think it's Doraemon and the Empire of the Rising Sun, which is set in the Maya civilization. But I thought it was fictitious because it was a kids' movie. So a few months later, my dad called me and he showed me there was a documentary. I think it was on Discovery Channel about the Mayan Empire. And I was, oh my God, it actually exists. So I saw, oh my God, there are people that research those places and they were named archaeologists. So I said, I'm going to be an archaeologist as well. So my parents have always motivated me to go to this area because that's what I wanted. And even though sometimes I went back and forth on whether to follow it, I decided to follow it in 2016 when I applied for college. Science communication was never a possibility for me. I'm very shy and introverted and socially awkward, and I never thought science communication is absolutely not for me. I can't do it. But in 2020, during the COVID lockdown, I started I was in my master's degree, and we had a discipline called science communication and archaeology or something around those around that name. And I loved it. And I thought, wow, not many stuff is being doing about this. Maybe I could do something. So I decided when I finished my master's degree in archaeology, I was going to do a master degree in science communication. So it was never an option. And then I started to see how I can bridge this gap in archaeology because we do have science communication archaeology. We call it public archaeology. But it's very recent. It's being done more outside Portugal, although we do have a lot of initiatives and programs about public archaeology, which I'm also starting to bridge those gaps. And even internationally, people from Brazil and India have already contacted me for projects. But in Portugal, I think there is still a little bit of pushback, although we do have quite a few initiatives right now. We had International Day of Monuments and Sites in April. We have International Day of Museums coming up in May 18th. And we have the European Archaeology Days in June. So we do have more initiatives now, which I'm happy to see. And I'm also trying to bridge that gap in colleges and companies and even city councils for more activities to communicate archaeology.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it purely in terms of tourist attractions, I mean, let's face it, a lot of the listeners here are probably from outside of Portugal or resident in Portugal, and we have a lot to see here, and I think for communication of these sites and to show the relevance and how important it is to Portuguese culture and history, and for people to come and visit them and then to contribute into their maintenance and into their into research as well is fascinating, and it's fascinating that we have so much here. It's really great, and we also your master's research focused on a fortaleza that I know quite well. Actually, I've never been inside it, but I've often surfed beneath it. It focused on the Fortaleza de Santa Catarina in de Ribamar in Portimão.
Yes.
What made this site particularly interesting and significant to you, and within the Portuguese military and coastal heritage?
So when we were in 2020, so it was a little bit before the COVID lockdown, and I was in my first year of my master's degree in archaeology, and I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. So I talked to one of my professors, and I said, "Look, 3D modeling and laser scan and photogrammetry is coming up on the scene right now. And I would like to do something about it, but I would also like to do something about something that hasn't been researched enough." And so she said that the city council of Portimão had ordered a laser scan and photogrammetry project for the Fortaleza de Santa Catarina, and if I was interested. And then she also said that they did the same for Fortaleza Ponta da Bandeira in Lagos.
Mm-hmm.
So I had those ones to choose from. And I researched a bit, and there was not a lot known about Fortaleza de Santa Catarina. So I said, I want that one. And that's how we came up. And then, of course, we were talking about in the days before lockdown. So we did the paperwork so the portraits would be mine to research. But then we went into lockdown and we had to wait quite a few, over a year, so I could go to the portraits for the first time. Of course, I had the project that had been done and I was processing that data. I was also going as much as I could to libraries and archives, because on lockdown everything was closed, but after lockdown we still had to wait quite a few months for everything to open back up, and we had a restriction everywhere. So it was quite difficult to just schedule a day to go to archives. But it was such a good journey, but also a bad journey. I have also talked extensively about how I started to hate archaeology while doing this master's degree.
Okay.
And I think COVID was the biggest player in all of this, because master's degree are supposed to be made in 2 years. I took 3 to make mine. So, but it came from this. I want something new. I want something that can be groundbreaking in a way that master's degrees aren't always. So I wanted something that would stand out. And that was the biggest contender I had. And now I'm happy that I took that shot. Um, but it was that journey about my master's degree. Of course, I read some things about the fortress that turned out not to be its actual story.
Ah, right. So it wasn't a lot of the stuff that you've read in the archives was not accurate. And what particularly was that? What makes it particularly significant? The Fortaleza, and is it? I mean, like most structures and historical sites, then I'm guessing there's sort of multiple phases of modification. But what is the story of the Fortaleza? I mean, I can imagine obviously it's a it's a dominant site. You have the entrance there to the river. You probably have a lot of sailing traffic from all through history coming along the Algarvian coast there. But what makes it? What is it? History? I mean, who was there, and what do you think? And you studied it in terms of sort of archaeology of architecture as well. So you didn't sort of do any excavation based archaeology. You didn't do sort of any digging. It was more sort of like trying to understand the architecture of the site. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. It was more. The fortress had been mentioned in quite a number of books, but the story that was there, it was based on comparisons to, okay, this happened to this fortress, so it must have happened to this one as well. So there was a lack of actual archival research. When I went into the archives, I started to put all the documents into chronological order and tracing its biography. I understood that, okay, people back then, we're talking about 20, 30 years ago, so it wasn't that long ago, um, were just speaking about the fortress, putting its story like it's the same as as every other fortress, but it was not. So, for example, I saw in quite a lot of books that the fortress did not have a moat.
Okay.
But the fortress did have a moat. It was dug around its main wall when it was built between 1630 and 6040. We don't. I still couldn't place the exact date that it was finished building because we don't have archives for that. But it was built in a time where we were being constantly raided by pirates and privateers, and that part of the coast didn't have enough protection. So it was seen as essential for protecting the entrance to the river, to protect Portimão. And it kept on being so up until the 1940s. So not only did people think that the fortress did not have a moat. It did have a moat and a drawing bridge initially, and then it had a normal bridge of rock and mortar. But it was demolished sometime, I don't know when. And then in 1940, when the fortress was given by the Ministry of War to the Ministry of Finances, in 1940, it started the process of converting it to tourism. But the fortress had the moat back then. And I saw in an archive a letter of someone sending it to the Ministry of War. Look, this fortress in Portimão, they are putting dirt into the moat. They are going to cover it. Do you know this is happening? And yeah, they replied, yes, we know that is happening. That is not a fortress anymore. So the fortress had a moat up until recently, but I don't think it's in people's memory because, I mean, it was in 1940, so it was quite a long time ago. But it did have a moat, and people kept on saying it didn't. And I'm like, we can see it on floor plans from the 17th, 18th, 19th century that it did have a moat.
Yeah.
And another thing was it was stated in many books that the fortress went out of business, let's say it like that, in the 19th century. And I know from archives that it only went out of business in a war aspect in 1940, even though it still kept apart a few rooms uh, dedicated to coastal guard up until the 1980s. So it was a fortress that remained working for its entire life. It's only now that the city council, which is now the manager of the fortress, is thinking about reopening to the public.
Okay. And what is the very first archaeological pieces of evidence that there is of the fortress? I mean, I'm sure it's such a prominent it's such a prominent location that I'm sure it has very, very early and sort of foundations.
Um, I think the biggest evidence, archaeological evidence I have is the ones I don't have.
Uh,
Which, for example, I wanted to dig up the moat. I think the moat should be dug and be exposed to the public. But I don't know if that's in project, but that's something I wanted to do. The biggest, I say the biggest archaeological evidence is the one I don't have, is I don't have evidence of the drawing bridge. I don't have evidence of the bridge that was made after. I don't even, many fortresses, all of them pretty much should have a stone above the entrance with
the date.
the date that it was built and the kingdom that it was built. The fortress doesn't have it. So the biggest pieces of evidence are the ones I actually don't have.
Hmm.
And I don't know why. Was it lost during the earthquakes of the 18th century? Why wasn't a new one placed to symbolize the reconstruction? What was happening so that that fortress in particular? There are a few others, but in the Algarve region, I think only two others don't have it. So why do those in particular don't have it? So, of course, the archaeological evidence that I found was in the main wall during the process of analyzing it for the method of archaeology of architecture was the different phases of construction. So obviously, the mortar used during the 17th century is much lighter, like a pale yellow, while the mortar used for reconstruction in the 18th and 19th century already uses a mortar that is much orange, so much more younger in this case. While we do see that there are a few patches of cement that is more common in the late 19th century and early 20th century. So we can see all those phases of construction and reconstruction because that fortress went through hell. Not only is right on the coast, so the typical erosion we see with the sea, but also it survived four earthquakes, three in the 18th century and one in the 20th century. So it stood, and we can still see the damage and how they tried to fix it right on the wall.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I know of a very small little fortress in Mea Praia that has a big head that got
Yes.
hit by the tsunami that has a massive crack in it. And going back to the you were talking about the moat. I'm guessing that probably the very earliest structures there, they would have had to have excavated some of materials that would have ended up being the moat to then make the structure on top. And so I'm guessing as through the life of the castle and how it was used, then I would imagine the moat is probably full of a lot of archaeological evidence because people would throw their trash or whatever into the moat. And then over time, you would get the sediment builds up. So you have quite a good, a good sort of reservoir there of possible archaeological finds. So do you think that you know excavating the moat there would give us a really, really good history and story of the castle?
Yes, the moat can be a time capsule, which we love in archaeology, and they are quite rare to find. It could offer us, but I'm afraid that it would offer us more data to the 20th century when it was covered. I don't know if they even went to the trouble of cleaning it up during the many years of its service. I don't even know how deep it is. I can only estimate how wide it could be, but I think the best way to know would be to dig it up and dig it up right at the entrance to see if we could find any vestiges of those bridges. Um, so the moat would be really interesting to dig up, but I don't think that is a possibility now. It would be a problem of finance and funding because we would have to build a bridge for people to pass because it is a way that people get to the beach is through the fortress. And before it was even a restaurant, it also had a coffee shop. So it's now an area made more for tourists to go through. So I don't know if it would be reasonable to dig up the moat, but it could be a time capsule there waiting for us.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe sometime in the future. So you've spoken about modernizing archaeology through tools like I can't say this word very easily.
Photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry and 3D models. How are these technologies changing both research outcomes and sort of accessibility to people in archaeology?
I think at the beginning there was a certain pushback against these types of technology. I remember when it was like 2018 or 2019. It was a bit before COVID. It was still a normal life back then. And I remember talking to various archaeologists and professors about 3D modeling, photogrammetry, laser scan, and the uses of platforms for people to be able to explore archaeological sites or even museums or artifacts. And they pretty much laughed at me. They said, that's very cute. We don't really have the infrastructure to do that. Who is going to host that? How is going to be accessible to us or the public? What are the costs? And so I was pretty much, I don't know, shamed into not talking about that for a long time until obviously we hit COVID and suddenly it was trendy to have digital museums and being able to go through an archaeological site with free models. And I was like, I talked about it like a year or two ago, and everybody laughed at me. And now it's trendy. And thank God it was trendy because people started to see the uses of technology. Obviously, it promotes accessibility because, let's be honest, many archaeological sites are not accessible. Not only are they not accessible because due to urban construction, because I work mostly in construction sites, so we have to be always on top of what is coming up. Sometimes nothing comes up, but sometimes we have really good, amazing structures that are coming up. And due to the project, sometimes they can't really change it to accommodate these new findings. So we have to demolish them. Obviously, all approved by by the state in this case, or not. Sometimes they force the project to be changed. But what we do immediately is photogrammetry, laser scan, so it can be preserved for posterior.
Yeah.
Because archaeological drawing, which we still do, it's quite I don't want to say antique, but I think a bit old fashioned. And it's highly, highly subjective. Photogrammetry and laser scan is not subjective. It's what's there with the depth, with the width. So and we can see with the colors. So it's much more well, not it's not perfect because nothing is perfect,
Mm.
but it's
Well,
much
we
more
can understand it.
accessible.
Yeah, we can understand it
Definitely.
better. And I think, like, for me, it seems kind of obvious because in terms of the communication pathway, I I spoke before that I have interest in history and archaeology and Portugal and things like that. So one of the first resources that I go to is online, and YouTube is a fantastic resource because you have a lot of information there that's free. They have a lot of visualization along with the audio presentation. So, you have these. I think it's fantastic. You're doing these 3D models and photogrammetry, and you're making these. I see a lot of stuff on YouTube already that they and it's like a window. And people will go, okay, look at what's going on here. This is really interesting. Now maybe
Yes.
we should go visit or we should go visit that area, or maybe we should go to the local museum there because I don't think people really turn up to a country and really go, okay, where are we going to go, and okay, what castle we're going to find. If they're interested in historical travel, they'll sort of research a lot of stuff before they go. Then
Yes.
they'll make an itinerary and a visiting and so I think it's really important. And I think, I feel like Portugal tourism or tourism de Portugal and various whatever operatives that the state run, should be really promoting this kind of window because it'll help preserve Portuguese culture and history and help communicate Portuguese culture and history. Um, with the added benefits of ancillary alojamento locales or hotels or whatever and transport and people sort of benefiting, restaurants, cafes benefiting in often sort of areas which are not visited. I mean, I live in the Alentejo, so on that Spanish border there, there's a whole bunch of fascinating castles with the most amazing histories. And I think these regions, and in my particular region, it could do with a little bit of tourist trade. I'm not talking about herds of tourists coming through and eroding all of the structures, but just a few interested travelers, historical travelers coming through and in enjoying these sites and enjoying the local culture and villages. And I think it could work. I think it's a nice type of tourism as well. So, um, yeah,
Yes.
I think what you're
Um,
doing is fantastic.
yes, and the more touristification can be bad, but it also can be good. The more tourism we have in a controlled and holistic way, that money, that funding could be used for rehabilitation of many historical sites that are extremely degraded, especially in the interior of Portugal, because I believe obviously Lisbon and Porto are the main metropolis of Portugal. So we can see that they are kinda maintained, some are really well preserved, and some are not. But in the interior of Portugal, we do see there is a huge gap in conservation of
Mm.
heritage. And in what part of Alentejo are you? Because my family is from Alentejo. I love Alentejo.
Oh, really? I'm sort of in between Aljustrel and Ferreira do Alentejo.
I love Aljustrel. Yes, it's
Yeah.
amazing. I love, love, love the interior of Alentejo, especially. We do have quite a lot of fortresses in the line of the border, especially Elvas,
Yeah.
which is not that far, but from where you live. But the in the interior, it's either a really magnificent structure to be preserved, or it's in a city center, or it's degraded, which we see quite a lot, especially in Alentejo. I think it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. There was a process of a crime that was destroying dolmens. So prehistorical burial site to plant almond trees. Um, so we have to map more about our cultural heritage because we don't know everything that exists. That's the truth. Sometimes I'm digging in a place where there was nothing found around, and it's exactly in the place that I'm digging that everything is going to be appearing.
Hmm.
So we do need to do a more intense mapping of structures and archaeological sites, and that is being sort of done, but not in the way that we need. And then the part of digitizing cultural heritage will help preserve those sites that can be um, destroyed due to construction, due to agriculture, and we can map also those sites that have been destroyed. And those sites can be, I'm not going to say available forever because we don't know how. Uh, we still don't know how we can preserve everything that is online. Uh, they say everything stays online, but that's not always the case. uh, the servers and we need a database to preserve, and obviously redundancies to preserve that database. Um, so there is an infrastructure that Portugal unfortunately doesn't have. That's why I always uh, try to, okay, let's do one thing at a time. Let's start with the basics, with the which is we're digging, we found something, let's digitize it. Um, so it is preserved, at least our part of the job is done, and then we can see how we can evolve from there to make it widely available. Of course, there are various initiatives like Cultural Heritage 360, which is in Portugal, we can visit museums and sites, which is an incredible feat considering the small time frame in which it was done. Um, but and we have lots of city councils putting their artifacts and the sites on Sketchfab, so it's also accessible. But we still need something like it's joint, a, a, a national effort, which is not being done yet. And it's a great tool, yes, for tourism, not only for archaeologists and historians, but also engineers. They are going to make interventions in those places for tourists, for people that can't physically access that place um, due to mobility issues, or because, for example, they are so far away they can't actually go there. For example, many people dream of visiting the Giza pyramids. Not many can go there. So digitizing and making which is, how is that called, with the oc- uh, those goggles? They're not
Yeah.
goggles.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Or augmented reality, perhaps
Yes,
something like that. Yeah.
yes, of virtual reality.
3D, yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of those, one of those
yeah,
realities. No,
is
that's
that,
fantastic. So you could actually walk around the Giza pyramids
yes,
through with,
yes.
yeah. I think it's
That we have an exposition in Lisbon, or we had, because it traveled the world, which is to explore the Giza pyramids inside.
wow.
It was really, really good. Of course, it was quite a headache after you remove those uh, glasses, I think. I was a little bit dizzy,
Yeah.
but it was an amazing experience, and it's true, not many people can go there.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what it does? It gives accessibility to many more people, many more
Exactly.
researchers, many more people might be inspired to look more. Information sharing of information is so important, and in this day and age as well, we have um, one of Portugal's main strengths. You can see in the tourism the sort of the beaches and the ocean and all this kind of thing is
Yes.
straining under the weight of its popularity and the nature. But there is so much more to Portugal, and the
Yes.
history and the culture is I hate to think of things in terms of finance and in terms of assets, but it's not just a financial asset; it's a cultural asset, and it's a story of a country and
Yes.
and many people's countries, because we there was a elements that were here before the Portuguese state, and then there's Roman remains, and then there's Celtic remains, and even further and further back. So it's so important that we preserve these things, and that we communicate this data and this information so that more people can learn, and therefore more people can appreciate, and the differences in all of our cultures and the similarities and what makes us a European people, and indeed, like in America, they are looking back to Portugal, searching for their roots and their history, and maybe perhaps in the Middle East they're looking to the early sultanates, and here, as part of the, I can't remember what it was called now, the El Hamad.
Yes, and
You know what I mean?
Almohad, yes.
Yeah, Almohad. That's it. So, I think it's it is so important, and I think giving this communication tools to make it easy for people, because we don't have a lot of time. If I can switch on YouTube, or if I can put on some goggles, like you say, and go through this experience, I'm all for it. I think it's very cool.
I think so too.
Yeah. I don't understand why people are just not more crazy about it. Well, I think there is a lot of people that is.
It's a lack of funding in Portugal. I think that is a very specific Portuguese issue, is lack of funding, because I think that would have to be secondary to all of the other issues we face to preserve cultural heritage. And that's the unfortunate answer.
Yeah.
Because, there are so many more urgent issues we do need to solve.
If you're looking to level up your surfing, JWC has got a couple of ways to get you moving forward. I'm running in-person surf coaching sessions here in Portugal with flexible dates. So if you're traveling through or planning a trip, we can lock in a few sessions and work on exactly what your surfing needs. And thanks to our collaboration with SurfRec, the AI robotic filming system now operating in Ribeira de Ilhas and Carcavelos, you can get footage of your sessions. Just send me 5 clips and I break down every detail for you. But even if you're not in Portugal, no problem. You can send me up to 5 waves from anywhere in the world. Surf trip to Indo, comp heats, or your local surf break. Even wave pools. If you got the footage, I'm happy to analyze it. If you want to dive deeper into SurfRec, check out our Podcast Portugal episode 50 with Zé Ferreira to book surf coaching sessions, to find out more about our immersive surf training camp schedule, online video analysis program, and special JWC rates for using SurfRec. Head to justinwestcoaching.com. Direct links in the show notes. Yes, funding is always seems to be an issue, and I think we can look at it in a different way. I think we can sort of say the word funding, or we can look at it in terms of investment. I think local councils and city councils, I think they're actually making quite a good investment if they can do some research and preservation and 3D modeling of important sites, important historical sites within their municipality, and then these can go to some kind of national archive, but also free for people to use in terms of YouTube, or like we were talking about, the 3D goggles, and that people can actually journey through these sites and learn a little bit about the archaeological digging process, and how relevant, like a historical story. This can be in English and multiple languages these days with AI. Um, and I'm sort of already seeing, like in Lisbon, we have quite it's kind of a center of technological research at the moment. There is obviously the Web Summit comes to Lisbon with all the major players.
Yes.
And I think there's some interesting connections we could make here with some of these tech companies who are advancing AI and visualization and communication through these 3D goggles. And we have an amazing resource here, which we could have. What a great way to sort of partner up and to make some kind of I don't know, make some sort of journey for people that they can experiment with these things. I mean, what do you, if I put on a pair of these glasses, I don't really want to go into some, or perhaps I do, I don't know, but I don't want to go into a game environment, or perhaps it could be a game environment which is based with actual historical 3D sites. I mean, how cool would that be? You could reenact some of the great maritime battles that happened in these fortresses, so you could actually learn about actual history, but also interact and become one of the soldiers on the fortress or something like this. I mean, these are all learning processes and manipulation of data and things that it's such a huge resource. And we are humans, we are loving information, we are loving data. And I think it's very important that we have this data is actual archaeological and based in historical fact. That would be very, very nice. What you're doing is the start of this, and it's very exciting.
Problem with funding in general, especially if it's public funding, is most people don't see it as an investment. And to be honest, most people don't even know what we do. I mean, many people still think archaeologists study dinosaurs and even worse, ancient aliens, because people see it on the History Channel. Uh, so there is still a lot of misinformation and disinformation within archaeology and many areas of the cultural heritage and history as well. So the funding won't come even if we don't start communicating properly and how much we are important, because people love to visit museums and they are very proud of seeing artifacts in museums, but they don't really care about the process of how they got in there in the first place. So they care and they find a part important, but not the other. Especially now with AI, we can't lie. AI is here to stay, and I think it's a positive, but we also have to look at the negatives. Right now, there is a cost action promoted by the European Commission, which is managing artificial intelligence in archaeology, which I'm a part of that project in communication. There will be an event in Lisbon this May 21st. So there is quite a lot that AI still gets wrong, and that's why the human touch will always be essential. There have been a few papers that have analyzed how archaeology analyzed our artificial intelligence. I mean, analyzes certain aspects of archaeology, especially due to Neanderthals, for example. They still get information extremely incorrect, considering the amount of evidence and papers that do exist, even online, more recently, of how they continuously disprove stigmas around Neanderthals. And AI still gets it wrong, and sometimes AI still gets wrong. For example, there was on the news, I think this week or the last week, that AI, especially generative AI, gets wrong historical facts. like wrong battle dates, wrong, pretty much wrong historical facts. And that is an issue, especially for young people starting out that do want to be on the forefront of using AI, but they will be using it incorrectly. It's not a question of if it's or when there is, we know they will use it incorrectly. Um, and the amount of evidence there is piling up that using generative AI is causing us to not be as critical thinking. So I think from AI applied to archaeology, the European project that I'm a part of will provide good guidelines on how we can use AI in archaeology. It's set to end in 2028, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and we hope that we can provide good guidelines on how to use AI ethically in archaeology, because we are still in a process of trial and error, and not only in archaeology. AI for the public and how we can use it is a trial and error so far until we get it right. I think we do need guidelines and an ethical code of conduct and probably legislation on how we can use it. Um, but so far we are in this trial and error process. It's fun. I'm not gonna lie. It's fun to see how AI is behaving in archaeology. For example, last year I did a small article on LinkedIn on how AI was getting information. Not wrong. It wasn't particularly incorrect, but the sources didn't even exist. So AI is going to, if AI is going to make up sources to try to fill in the gaps of its own knowledge, it's going to also produce false information to fill those same gaps. So we are in a, I think, trial and error, but also a gray area of AI. But it does have immense potential. We still are discovering so much on how we can use AI, not only everyday use, but also in sciences, because
I
AI
think,
is science in itself.
yeah,
Uh,
I think it's very important that we highlight the fact that AI sometimes just likes to tell us what we want to hear, and
yes,
often it takes its information and data from the populist zeitgeist. So it's just sort of rehashing things that we might expect to hear. So it brings us back to that point, how important it is for science and for archaeology and for for to have good research data, and that AI, perhaps AI models can, you can have specific AI archaeology models which
I
only
think
draw
that would be
its
amazing.
data from proper scientific research, as opposed to amalgamating the populace opinions, which often, are wrong or are creative. Because who knows where it's getting its data from? Maybe it's getting its data from Graham Hancock, who's
Yes,
making a lot of sort of very nice and fanciful assumptions, but not necessarily always based in archaeological fact. So I think it's nice. I think it's nice to have people interested in it, and it's nice to have the story. It's nice to have attention on particular themes of archaeology. But I think it also is very, very important that it's rooted in good research and good data and good science, like
yes,
everything.
but that gives us another bigger problem, which is not everything is online. And AI relies on what it can be found online, and that, or what we can feed into it that probably is not online. So, for example, the millions of books that exist about archaeology, or the millions of research journals that exist that may be older and are not online yet. Uh, that information that is precious for, I don't know, literature review, or to find research gaps, or to find a paper that proves what I'm telling, or serves as a beacon to how I can direct my research, those are not online. So that gives us an even bigger problem on how can that information become online so that AI can actually be reliable
Yeah.
in helping us. So
And it's
that
also
brings it
interesting that raises another ethical question: is who decides what information is should an AI be using and or not? You know what you know, because you could have a one book that has one idea of research or whatever, and then you can have another book which is could sort of um, discuss and say the other book is wrong, and then AI is sort of like, well, which who decides which book should be the reference point? You know?
exactly. There is a AI can't see the nuance in many things, so it's very black and white. It pretty much doesn't see the gray area in between. So that's why it can be an issue. That's why the human eye is important to access what is actually important. Like, for example, right now, yes, people can be using AI to make their own research. We do know of papers that were made with AI and they have passed the tools that we use for plagiarism, or sometimes the tools that rely on AI to detect plagiarism that isn't even there. And that keeps on happening on every scientific area. We do see it happening more often as time goes on. So we are now entering a border of which is AI, what part. Sometimes I'm reading reports in archaeology and I'm like, this was made with AI. I'm sure, but I can't prove it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, I don't want to disparage my colleagues because I do use AI as a tool. Like, can you search if this even exists? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't, I'm going to look after it. I use
Yeah.
AI. I'm not afraid to or ashamed of admitting it. But I don't just make a prompt of write this report for me and then I copy and paste it because I don't think that is ethical. And AI sometimes can't read or understand stratigraphy of how the various contexts of a dig they were found or what they do represent. If I say it appears it's a wall that has rock and mortar, uh, but it doesn't read the context of the other parts of the stratigraphy that were found or above or underneath, and it doesn't give me an interpretation of the data. So I have been finding those in some articles, papers, and I'm like, okay, I understand because when I read the data, I understand, but the AI didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think
we're
it.
finding that.
I was talking to an economist friend of mine, and we were talking about how much we use AI. We both have like multiple AI systems on our access to, because I like to enter data into one, and then I like to sort of then get it to be critiqued by another AI, and then I'll critique it by another AI just to see how they all operate. And I think
Yes,
what came out of our discussion was fundamental is how you prompt, how much you prompt AI to do what you want. So I like to use the analogy of the hammer and the chisel. You have the human and the hammer and the chisel, which are basically two different types of AI. And it's the human interface that sort of guides both the chisel and the hammer. And therefore you get a result. If you've just got a hammer on its own or a chisel on its own, it doesn't really do anything. But it's the
exactly.
interaction between those three features that actually, and I think it's important in education now as well for students to learn the importance of prompts, and you can even use AIs to help you create prompts that to better
Yes,
your research. Yeah, it's interesting.
absolutely. Because people fail to see that AI is not an archaeologist. AI is not an historian. AI is not a science communicator. AI isn't a science. a scientist. AI is a part of science, a part of technology. So it has to be a tool, and a tool that is fallible. It can get many, many things wrong, and people are putting too much trust in it. Hence why we see that obviously AI can't interpret archaeological results because it does because it wasn't on the field, it wasn't digging, it didn't see how things appeared or what appeared. They only see the information that is given, and they can draw inspiration from other reports, but we can tell immediately, no, that is not it. And different AIs will give different results, but ultimately, none of them gets them right. And sometimes we have to write even more prompts so it can go to the bedrock of the question. And sometimes it does give the answer, but we can tell that that didn't even understand the question, which is baffling to me. How can you give me the answer, but you state that you don't understand the question? It's a gray area that I think, especially in archaeology, we can give the necessary guidelines on how to proceed with AI, because it is a tool, it's here to stay, and we hope we can give it fair use, because AI does help. I'm not gonna lie. It organizes our time. It manages well. It does give us more time to do what we love, either in archaeology or in our personal lives. So it is a tool to be valued, but it's not the tool to be 100% trusted, especially with such important things like interpret this data for me. And the data, I'm not going to say the data is wrong. Sometimes it can be wrong. Sometimes there are archaeologists, especially more back then. It doesn't really happen now. That archaeology was only up until the end of the Roman Empire. So we're talking about other 1,700 years of history from Portugal are pretty much in existence. They don't exist. Um, so they weren't preserved as well. So the data can be wrong, and the AI can interpret new data the same way. So there are various issues we are seeing right now.
And is this you're pursuing your PhD now, and is this some of the key research questions that's sort of driving your this current phase of work?
My PhD thesis will be about all military infrastructures built in the Algarve coast from the 15th to the 18th century. So we're talking about, I have verified up to 90 fortresses, little forts, watchtowers. And I'm going to see how they were implemented due to military engineering, obviously the uh, geostrategic regions, how they used native materials, how they communicated between them, and how they made a landscape. And that is how I plan to use AI and see what it does give me interpretation, how the landscape was back then and how it evolved. I'm going to see if AI can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do it by hand. And I'm interested of seeing if what AI interprets is the same as I'm interpreting. And if AI is drawing the same way I'm drawing, it's going to be an interesting experience. But the ultimate output of my PhD thesis, I hope, is going to be a website, a platform where every um, structure that I identify is put on a map, can be consulted, can be seen, and has the list of where you can find all of the archives and all of bibliography you can imagine for each an individual structure. I hope that
Wow,
is my output.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, so it's going to be helpful for tourism, for uh, urban management, but also I hope it can be expanded not only to the rest of the Algarve, obviously the interior, but for the rest of Portugal.
Wow.
So we
Please,
can
please.
know,
That'd be
yeah,
amazing. And let's I'm gonna really encourage you to make like a YouTube channel so that we could follow the journey of all of these different fortresses. So what a great series that would make. Portuguese military structures. Wow. Yeah, that
yes,
would be very good.
that is a possibility. Right now, I am on TikTok and Instagram. I'm starting out. I only started this year after quite a long time of pondering, but I decided to take a chance. And I'm showing how archaeology is, because archaeology is still to this day romanticized,
Mm,
and this is not a romantic science. So I'm trying to demystify real time on what archaeology looks like and sounds like, and how we manage archaeology,
mm.
and also science communication, because I'm interested in various sciences, and as a science communicator, I have to be on top of
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
to keep myself updated and to be able to reach out to many people that may find use in that information. So now I'm testing it out, but doing a series about each fortress would be quite an amazing idea. Thank you.
Well, I don't know how much you know for like sort of UK. It's. I'm talking about like popular media, really. But I had there's a TV series that I used to follow religiously. It was called Time Team.
Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
it was just so cool. I just absolutely loved watching that, and um, I think I was talking to my wife Rita. She also said, but when she was younger, she remembered an old guy on Portuguese TV that used to do a lot of he kind of almost like
Yeah,
as a David Attenborough character, used to do a lot of the history and some of the and I don't remember his name, but I want to try to find where I can listen to him and because it was
but he was
super interesting.
bold, right? Are we thinking about the same person?
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember his name. And I don't think Rita can remember his name as well. But it was when she was growing. I think it was from like the 80s or something, or the 90s. It was very old, but he was an old Portuguese gentleman that went around all the different historical sites and was talked about.
Yes, we're talking about José Hernan Saraiva, I
He,
think.
possibly. I think he fell out of favor though with something, some political issue. I don't know, but I'm not sure on the story. But yeah, that kind of thing is
He
really
used to
interesting.
have quite a few, if we're talking about the same person, he had quite a few TV shows where he went from region to region and talked
Yeah.
about the prime Portuguese examples of history.
Yeah, I think so. It must have been him. I must be. I need to do my research better and look it up. But yeah, I mean that kind of thing is fascinating. It just makes it accessible to people. You do all
Yes.
the background work, you do all the data, you do all the really good science, and it's just I'm not going to say dumb it down, but it's just well, it doesn't need to be dumbed down really because the
No,
data
no,
and the
no. It's
science is the
correct.
interesting thing. But it needs to be just told in a nice story, like Time Team, or
Yes.
presented in a way which because it is fascinating. And
We do have in Portugal, which is Visita Guiada, which is
mhm,
in RTP, the Portuguese channel. Uh, it's obviously in Portuguese. I don't think you can put subtitles. I don't think. Maybe now you
maybe
can, because you can find it also on the internet. But yes, they do go from place to place, and they talk with specialists about the site. So there have been quite a few archaeologists in there. One of them was my professor. I think it was National Geographic did
Oh wow.
the Portugal from the sky. Is that how it says in English? I know it's visto do céu in Portuguese or something like that, where they went to many places in Portugal, not only cultural heritage, but some were as well. And many specialists, some my professors, even spoke about the history of those places. So the job is being done. It might not be accessible to everyone because it's in Portuguese mostly, and Portuguese it's a hard language. I'm not gonna lie, I'm native. Um, but we do need, I think, more documentaries and more TV shows like Time Team, because I know it was actually fun to watch. I've watched some episodes
Yeah.
when I was researching um, various ways in which the archaeology could be communicated. But yes, you said dumb it down, but it's actually what it is. We just say it in a more beautiful way
Exactly.
because but let me tell you, sometimes when I'm in conferences or congresses, I don't really like. It's not the point of. I'm not talking about me speaking, but me hearing. I don't even like hearing archaeologists talk in such a way that sometimes not even I understand.
Mm.
So sometimes it's a form of elitism, which I don't
Okay.
like. It's not
Interesting.
accessible, and in congresses, not only archaeologists are present. Sometimes even people that are from other areas are there, and they don't really understand. And I'm like, make your speech more
Mm.
understandable for
It's
people,
true.
because sometimes I have to really like stop and rethink of what people said, and I don't understand anything. And
Mm.
then I'm go and read the paper, and I'm like, okay, I understand what it's written. Uh, but sometimes even in papers they use such a language and such scientific um, words that I'm like, they don't make sense here, first and foremost. I don't know what you are trying to accomplish. And then when they are speaking up, they use the exact same phrases, and they are hard to understand. I don't know why they do it. I don't know if it's to sound more academic
To protect
or
the field. I mean,
yes,
if you think about like the greatest and most historic, can I say, or the oldest, if we imagine the oldest stories that exist in the human and for humans, they have been told time and time again as stories around campfires or stories, and it's the storytelling in itself which has made those histories memorable.
yes,
And if we don't make them memorable, even with digital transformation and all these kind of things now, they'll be we could have a technological blackout, which everything technologically it could be fried, and all that will exist is our memories and our ability to carry those stories forward to the next generation in terms of storytelling. So
yes,
um, I think it's so important, and to make it interesting is 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 so important, and not to, because as soon as you put up particular phrases or you talk in a certain way, an archaeological way, then you're putting up a wall around your field, and there's less people going to know about it. You have
yes.
less
I agree.
perspectives, less people researching, less people, and I think yeah, you know,
Yes.
very
For
interesting.
example, one archaeologist in Portugal said it perfectly, so I'm gonna quote it, which is: "Se a arqueologia no final não contar uma história, não serve para nada." Meaning, if archaeology in the end doesn't tell a story, it means nothing.
Yeah,
So he
great.
said it perfectly. Because what is the point of just sitting around and saying data and percentage and it's this type of emperor and not that one. Like,
Mm.
tell me the story.
Yeah.
How did they
Yeah.
get there?
But
What did they
base
do? What
but
did they
base the
use it for?
story on those facts, but you don't need to
Exactly.
regurgitate the facts. You can refer to
Exactly.
them. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a beautiful message, and I think in this day and age when we have people manipulating data for their own political ends, I think it's very, very. I don't think it's could be any more important to have these stories that connect us much more. Because if you just look at history from a certain perspective, you can be fooled into believing things nowadays that is simply just not true, and
Exactly.
things that divide us. And
Yes,
I think shared archaeology and our shared history is something that brings us all together, globally, not just in European or regional. Um, yeah. So,
yes.
Bruna, I'm really looking forward to watching your YouTube channel. So
Thank you.
I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to look forward to it. So anybody out there, any listeners out there, who want to get involved with this, or get in contact with Bruno if you have any ideas, or anybody out there who's developing AI and technological glasses that could take us on a unique journey through ancient Portuguese historical sites, or even not so ancient.
Exactly.
Get in contact. And
Obviously.
anybody also wants to follow Bruna, how can they follow you, Bruno, and get more information about your work and what you're going to be doing and what you are doing?
Where you can follow me mostly, it's on LinkedIn. It's
Okay.
my full name, Bruna Ramalho Galamba. It's only, you can search it there.
Okay.
But I'm also on TikTok and Instagram under the name Oh Your Dad Archaeologist.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
you can find me there at the moment.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. So for everybody that hasn't got a pen and paper just to hand, I'm going to write this in the show notes. You can also find all the links will be on Bruna's episode on podcastportugal.com. You'll also find all the links there to her different platforms and where you can find out more about her. And also on there, on podcastportugal.com, you'll be able to find links to Spotify, Amazon podcasts, YouTube podcasts, Apple podcasts, where you'll be able to listen to this episode. We'll also have a digital file up there, which you can literally click and play or even download straight from our website. So, Bruna, a big thank you to you for your time, and perhaps in the future we can do another episode. That would be really nice, and to give us a little bit more information on what you're doing and how everything is going. And thank you for your time.
thank you so much for the invitation. I had a great time. I hope it inspires people
Yeah,
to come and see what Portugal has to offer regarding cultural heritage. And I will always be available if for another episode if you would like. There is
perfect.
much we can talk about.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bruno.
Thank you so
This
much.
Hey, this is Justin West from Podcast Portugal, thanking Bruna, and what a nice one. Thank you all. Out. Did you know that Portuguese bank accounts can sometimes be frozen by the authorities? As someone who's traveled extensively and now runs a business here in Portugal, I value freedom, seamless usability, and bulletproof security. That's why I can't say enough good things about Revolut. With a Revolut account as your backup, you'll still be able to pay bills, receive payments, and keep everything running smoothly, even if you're not in the country. Revolut gives you multi-currency accounts, lets you spend in over 150 currencies at interbank rates, and provides advanced security features like instant card freeze, disposable virtual cards, and safe online shopping. And an app that's as intuitive as it gets. To help support Podcast Portugal, and if you're thinking about setting up a bank account as a backup, click the link in the show notes to sign up for a new Revolut account. It's a win-win situation. You get all the benefits of Revolut, and every time someone signs up, Revolut rewards Podcast Portugal with €40. Revolut, freedom in your pocket. Sign up today and show your support for Podcast Portugal.